Hey, this is Evan with Digilogix Audio, and I just wanted to give a quick little update on some of the changes that I've made to this project. So, when applying phase modulation to the instrument, pay attention to the knobs on the right side of each of the control panels. These controls are for sending modulation not to the oscillator that you hear, but applying modulation to the other operators, as well as sending modulation to an operator itself. A sine wave when in self-modulation can excite really interesting harmonic content and can do so in a controlled manner. If you watched my phase distortion video that focuses specifically on self-modulation. A sine wave, so this interesting harmonic spectrum that can be done so in a controlled manner, this relies on a sinusoid's single harmonic content. Anything with more than just a single harmonic will be exponentially less stable, greatly increasing the likelihood of the feedback inducing aliasing. Aliasing in the form of this technique is called parasitic oscillation, and you can see what that looks like if I see this fuzzy stuff. This is parasitic oscillation, and it's, in this case, not so much of a bad thing. You hear the motion in it. It kind of sounds like something is shaking in the tone. You really can only hear that if I hold a note, and if there's any other sounds playing, it will go completely unnoticed. This this noise is from the self-modulation inducing aliasing, or producing harmonics that go beyond your Nyquist frequency, exceeding the properly representable frequencies of the system. In this case, it's not such a bad thing, as this noise can actually be a really interesting addition to the sound. It's a common synthesis technique to apply white noise to a signal, as it gives a little bit of motion, a little bit of uncertainty, and because of white noise's flat spectral content, it adds the highs, the mids, the lows, everything. So I found this noise to be really nice, sharp high-end, probably due to the noisy nature of the phase-modulated formants themselves. Excessive feedback will induce high amplitude jumps and jerkiness in the sounds of the waveform from around 8 to 16 hertz, so really, really slow, but that's if I way overdo it like this. Okay, that was a really bad example because that took a lot more than I was expecting. Okay, I can't even get the low frequency shakiness to happen, but you see there's quite a range of phases of self-modulation that it can actually handle. So reducing any overtones within the fedback operators is a great way to deal with this aliasing, as often the aliasing is coming from a single source, and if you reduce the high end coming from that source, you can apply a lot more phase modulation without it producing problematic aliasing issues. So being able to move the threshold of aliasing around by distributing the phase modulation wisely, you'll have a noticeably higher capacity to feedback spectral content and shape the tone. Needless to say, with the extra brightness from the feedback between the three modulators, you will need and want less phase modulation to be sent to the M fundamental and global destinations to achieve desired brightness. So let's see, let's just play with some tones. So these first 4 snapshots are all derived from this bass tone, and I'm just applying modulation from C to B, and usually from B back to C. Sometimes I'll apply, oh, I have it in the name. Yeah, so this is sending from C to B, and from, that's right here, and then from B back to C. I'll remove the feedback, and you should hear it. You can tell it's the same tone, kinda. Obviously this is not going to do anything, because not only am I crossfaded to 0, but now you should hear something. So another interesting way of dealing with this is that you can, since I'm sending from operator B to operator C, I could feed operator B onto itself, making the modulation from B to C a lot brighter. So let's take a listen to that. So this concept is also inversely true. If I was sending from operator B to operator C and then from C back to B, you don't have to actually hear operator C to benefit from it modulating itself. So the great thing about self-modulation, I'm going to end up saying phase distortion. I try to avoid using that term, but that's what I learned this technique as, so apologies if you know phase distortion under a different definition. So this phase distortion is really nice because it resists aliasing. It does not alias as much as you would expect as you play higher and higher notes. So it's resistant. It's not as readily going to fold over as badly as you would think. Of course, you do have to reduce it when you know you're going to be playing higher notes, but it's not a linear thing. It shows less of an effect on the high frequency content as you would think it would. So you would think that this is just going to alias like hell, but I'm not going to touch the feedback amount, and just listen. It sounds pretty much like the same amount of phase distortion is happening on these higher notes. I'm sorry. It sounds like pretty much the same amount of aliasing tones as the lower notes, which the amount of folded over tones should increase as the frequency of my fundamental increases, and it remains relatively constant. And at that point, it's pretty much gone. That's really uncommon, and that's something that's really unique to phase distortion. You'll hear as I play lower and lower notes, the noisiness will come back. I attribute this in my head to a higher note having less information within one cycle, as in like less audio samples. So when playing higher notes, it's as if less information is being fed back, meaning that low notes respond to phase distortion with a lot more sensitivity than high notes do. That's about the same amount of change right there, and you really can't hear that much change going on. So let's go back to one of these snapshots. I love that. So just being aware that the aliasing is going to happen is a very effective tool of dealing with aliasing. If you're not aware that it's going to happen, it is probably going to be a lot more of a surprise. So the reason that this aliasing is happening is because the frequency content that I'm feeding from operator to operator or operator back on itself is going to be greater than just a sine wave. I guess right now A and B are sinusoidal modulators, but C is currently it's the first half of a sine wave. So that has more harmonic content, therefore it's going to be more unstable. In other words, it's going to be quicker to fold over, quicker to alias. But like I said, not a bad thing. I find the um, parasitic oscillation to be really interesting. I just recently uploaded the version 0.55 to the user library, and I'm debating with myself on uploading 0.65, which is what I have right here. I've started working on some instructions. As you see, I have these little explanations of what's going on here, and I'm going to be creating more formal instructions on how to use this thing. But for now, take a look at the snapshots. They're probably going to be the most informative. You really don't have to turn many knobs to get this thing to do something interesting, as long as the knobs that you're turning are not like this one when crossfade is set to 0, because of course all of these M's are not going to have any change in the world until you apply some of this, and this is going to be overwhelming. Yeah. So, anyways, if you think this is worth uploading to the user library, let me know. Thanks so much for listening, and have a great rest of your day. Never, ever, ever stop playing music. Don't do it.